Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, Junk Be Gone, and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. We're happy to have you join us today in the Paper Be Gone studios. We've got a lot to talk about. There's going to be some baseball to start with, some football in here. Good prediction for the Volunteers from one of those magazines that I used to gobble up when it would pop out in the summer when I was a kid. We'll also talk a little basketball and scheduling at the end of this show. We've got 3 media members. We're going to have 2 VFLs in the house today. So let's dive right into this thing. Our first segment of today's show is brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. If you find yourself in need of a quality attorney, get a local team who know the local people and know the local court system. Just watch their TV ads. You'll figure out who's here and who's not. So many of these ads aren't shot anywhere in Knoxville, and they don't have Knoxvillians in them. Marcos Garza is here. He and his team are part of this community. If you need an attorney, call the Garza Law Firm. Visit this week garzalaw.com to learn more about the folks you should call if you find yourself in need of quality attorneys. All right, let's welcome in some quality analysts to start the show. We have right here from 99.1 The Sports Animal, Josh Ward and Vince Ferrara. Gentlemen, thank you. And right down there, Chuck Cavaleris, longtime sports writer, longtime member of our panel. Always sits far, far away from me.
As far away as you can keep me, right, John?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. Vince, a month ago on this show, you sounded the warning. You said, well, you know, no #1 seed has won the College World Series since 1999 when the field first expanded. And over the weeks, we kind of talked about the fact that it is a rough road to hoe. But when you look at it, in hindsight, terribly disappointing. We'll rank it in terms of disappointments for Vol fans. Just going back to 2000. The list would be too long if you go back past that. But what went wrong? Just give me an overall. You're part of the Vol broadcast team. What went wrong for Tennessee to lose it to 2 out of 3 to Notre Dame in the Super Regional here at home?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't use, and not that you did, but I wouldn't use the term failure, which I've heard people throwing around. They've accomplished way too much for that. Disappointing, yes. It only takes 2 losses. You run into a hot team that has been disrespected by the NCAA. They felt 2 years in a row. And regardless of who it is, hot pitching, hot team, bad matchup, this can happen. This can end in a 24-hour period at times. So Tennessee just wasn't playing its best ball. Not terrible in terms of pitching or offense. The defense was sloppier. Wasn't horrible, but it wasn't their best. And at times they were spectacular, by far the best in the league and in the country. It just takes that. That's how thin the margin between winning and losing is. Tennessee also wasn't able to, and John, you brought up the intimidation factor. Tennessee wasn't able to get out to as hot of starts offensively and jump out on people as they did for most of the year. So now here's this big #1 team with a 5-run lead, a 7-run lead on you. Now that kind of kicks into place. They weren't able to do that. Teams are jumping out on Tennessee, playing from behind. Now it's a different story. Now you're not able to play to your strengths and play uphill. So, or you're having to play uphill. So just weren't as sharp at the wrong time of the year.
I think you also, when you are that level, I mean, all #1, it's a big target.
Yeah.
It's a big target. Everybody wants to beat #1.
Right.
When you are that dominant all year long, you put a bigger, it's a bigger target. Yeah. When the conversation goes to historically good, when you have an ESPN analyst say, I'll take Tennessee over the field.
Yes.
That makes everybody even hungrier to knock you off. So I thought Notre Dame didn't look intimidated at all coming in there. And they almost made the World Series last year, made it this year, immediately got there, won game 1 against Texas.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. So you're right, though, certainly not a failure. You won the toughest league in college baseball and the tournament. So,
and you may be remembered as the best college baseball team never to go to Omaha.
You don't want that one.
But that's kind of the best you've got right now.
Added to the accomplishments.
Yeah. Josh, late in that game, I said, and Vince brought it up, I thought teams, especially in the SEC, and I said in the SEC where they know what kind of runs you produce, even late, they have to feel a little pressure because that Tennessee run is coming. It's like, as a Celtics fan, be a little like facing Steph Curry. You know he's going to get his at some point. When Tennessee didn't get theirs the other day, did it look to you, it looked to me, like they were pressing late? Not that that's not natural, but did you think they were feeling the pressure late in Game 3 there, those last 2 or 3 innings where they just didn't look like their usual selves to me?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. And part of that's what Vince said too, not being totally sharp. If you're not at your best, and all of a sudden you have to make up several runs or your season's over, well, it can be easy to press. Drew Gilbert's bunt, if the pitcher just takes his time, that's an easy out, and that's the guy you're looking to go up there and mash, and then gets thrown out at second, trying to get that extra base. So that could be an example of pressing, but that's because they knew, hey, we've got to. Once you're down by several runs, one run is one story. That was the case late against Georgia Tech, right? 3-4 runs, when you have to make that up in a short amount of time, you have 6 outs to work with, 5 outs to work with, 4 outs to work with. It would be very easy to press.
Chuck, I'll start with you, and then we'll let everybody get involved in this one. If you're a basketball team that shoots 43 pointers, that's your thing. Every night we shoot 43s. You get to the Final Four, and all of a sudden you go 2 for 40 that night. You say, well, you live by the three-point shot, you die by the three-point shot. That's an old saying in sports. Tennessee lived by emotion all year. They talked about this we play this way because it makes us play better. I've heard that talk.
Right.
Well, back to Friday night. Drew Gilbert is warned. He gets to home plate in front of the ump, cusses him a couple times or cusses a couple times in front of him, at him, near him, whatever, gets ejected. Frank Anderson comes running out of the dugout. Ejected. He'd been ejected earlier in the season, so now it's a multi-game suspension. He's not there on Sunday to help Tony Vitello with the Chase Burns decision
In the 7th inning.
late. Now we're connecting dots here.
Right.
He's not there because this happened, and that was emotion. Is it fair or not to say this team lived by emotion and they died by emotion? Did the emotion come back to bite them at the end?
Boy, it certainly feels that way, doesn't it? Because, one thing led to another. The Drew Gilbert thing, you're still trying to get over. And then when he comes back, I'm thinking he's going to play one of the best games he's ever played. And it was just like when he was hitting with kind of weak pop-ups. Frank Anderson, are you going to have a stay-back coach like they do in football?
In football, yeah.
To
the quality control guy.
Because, see, that's an automatic ejection. Some people miss that, I think. But if somebody on the bench, a coach or whatever, comes running out on the field like that, and it was the crew chief that ran him. So you don't have them. So all of a sudden, all these other things you're talking about, I think it certainly played a role in it. The emotion, you live by it, and then you didn't have those guys because of some of that emotion.
Agree, disagree, gentlemen?
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I don't know if it cost them in the end, but it's undeniable that you're better off with Frank Anderson than
without him,
right?
Yeah.
So do they make the same decision with Chase Burns? Perhaps. But nobody's going to argue they're better off with Frank Anderson not being available to be there in the dugout, and you just can't have that kind of mistake at that spot in the Super Regional. So it negatively affected them. Did it cost them? I don't know, but it hurt them in the end, no doubt.
Yeah, ultimately Tony Vitello's decision on pitching decisions like that. So maybe Frank Anderson says, "Yeah, go get him." He's like, "No, we just got the best hitter out to pop up. We need to leave him in there." It could have very well been the same decision. I think the emotion thing is a little bit overstated with this team. Part of the genius of Tony Vitello and why he's got the culture and people playing so hard for him is because he lets them be who they are, not he forces them into a box of having to play this way and emotional. He had those kind of personalities on this year's team. There's no guarantee the future teams won't have different personalities, more cerebral, not as expressive. But the key is him letting them be who they are. That's why they play hard. That's part of the recruiting selling point. Let them be who they are. They just had some personalities that play that way. Frank Anderson's always been that way, and he's still regarded as the best pitching coach in college baseball by many. So I just think those are two tough incidents that came together that sort of added to it. But I don't think they played this great. They played this great because of talent and camaraderie, not because of the emotion.
Yeah, but I would add, if you're doing a self-evaluation, you need to, right, at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. I would look at that and say, we've got to channel this positively. Yeah. The Jordan Beck situation the weekend before, Drew Gilbert Friday night, showing emotion, showing energy after a home run, flip your bat, I am all for it, for it. But going toward and up, that can get you kicked out.
We got several segments on this coming up later. Let's not do the show in segment 1, but we're going to talk about that. Should Tennessee tone it down at all next year? And your response there is interesting because I can scratch a question I have off. Personally, I would find it. I've heard everybody talk about, well, that's how they play. That's why they're better than everybody else. I would find that kind of insulting. Are you telling me if you can't flip bats, suddenly you can't hit anymore? I would think it had more to do with skills and talent to get these guys drafted as opposed to wearing a fur coat and getting to second base and doing this. It would seem to me that that's ancillary. So that was you jumped ahead. That one's done. We won't go there. Oh, he didn't know it was coming. That's good. That just shows simpatico. All right. When we come back, let's talk about a little bit more about the baseball team. Let's put a wrap on it. Tony Vitello's accountability. What's it look like for next year? Dynasty. Does college baseball need a new format for their championship? We'll discuss all this coming back on the Sports Source.